Tim Davie, I think he probably regretted this statement about how brilliant value the BBC is immediately, because Twitter suddenly exploded with all these people saying, all right, then charge us 400 quid a year. See how you get on.
It's a bold claim, isn't it? It's a bold claim. This is 5.5 times the amount of money that people pay for Netflix, the service that they pay for willingly, they pay for because they want to, they pay for because they like to. He thinks we're going to pay 5.5 times more for a service that we're currently forced under the threat of state violence to fund. It's almost delusional. And I think the way that he's got to this figure is he said that from everything from Radio 4, boring dramas about some sort of Dickensian nightmare up in the Yorkshire Dales in 1874, all the way to Strictly Come Dancing, all of that comes under one bracket. And that he reckons is worth 400 and whatever pounds. But that's absurd, because the sort of people that are going to pay for Strictly are not the sort of people that are going to pay for a Radio 4 documentary about Tutankhamun. It's just crazy. So he's really just revealed quite how flimsy their position is here. I mean, if the BBC was ever to do a subscription model, and I really hope they do. I mean, you're spot on. The correct reaction to this is to look the BBC in the eye and say, "Go on, do it then. Do it. Stop threatening me with jail, and maybe I'll pay for what I want." And that's the point. People will pay for what they want to pay for, and that'll be Strictly Come Dancing. One group might pay for that, and one group might pay for another. And the reality of it is, if the BBC did this, it would be a vastly downsized organisation, because you wouldn't have the commercial bits, which the commercial sector can do very well. And it's unquestionable that ITV, News UK, and all of the big major media organisations would do commercial TV far better. And then you wouldn't have that propping up the news organisation. And it's also absurd to say that people are going to pay for BBC News when Sky is free and would still be free. Why are they going to pay for that? It's a ludicrous statement.
Well, don't forget, in a recent poll, 94% of the population said that they felt the BBC was biased, that BBC News was not impartial. Only 6% feel that the BBC News service is impartial. Now, that's a dangerous state of play for the BBC, which has always prided itself on its sense of fairness and balance in the news arena. To be fair to the BBC, I think it is more balanced in its news output than people give it credit for, but it did screw up on the Brexit case, there's no doubt about it. But let's go through a few figures here. This is what you get for your money. On the BBC, 683 documentaries are currently available. On Netflix, 794. Films, 134 movies currently available on the BBC iPlayer. 1,125 are available on Netflix GB. TV shows, 1,568 shows on the BBC. 1,125 shows currently listed on Netflix BG. UK content budget, 500 million for Netflix. BBC, 1.6 billion. Subscription cost £157.50 for the BBC, of course, which you have to pay. The optional cost of Netflix is £71.88 basic, £167.88 premium. So actually the premium service is more expensive than the BBC, but the BBC also supplies 10 channels and says that it does school service, children's telly. It's got 50 radio stations, 10 apps, 10 TV channels, as I say. There's obviously only one Netflix app and one Netflix channel. So that's the BBC's case, that it's a far more comprehensive service. Do you feel that it is worth £157.50 a year?
Absolutely not. And it's because you might say that that huge amount of content equals X amount of money, but That's not how the British people view it. You know, if you enjoy BBC Asian Network or you enjoy Strictly Come Dancing, you will pay for that service, or you will put up with 10 minutes of adverts a day on that service to enjoy it. Like, you don't need to pay your money to fund a whole plethora of services pushing a whole plethora of agendas just because you want to tune into TV. And it's not only BBC TV that you have to tune in before you end up funding the BBC, remember. If you have a lineal television connection in this country, you know, if you watch Channel 4 or ITV even once a month, you have to pay for that entire spread of services that you've just mentioned. And, you know, you talked about the impartiality question. And I mean, that's a whole nother topic about the way that the BBC is travelling, and it justifies itself on the sort of basis that it serves everyone in this sort of neutral way. I think that's completely mythical. I think there is no news service in this country that comes at news without a particular way of seeing things, or a particular, just a worldview. And we're seeing the Ofcom, the regulator, and a couple of new news providers that are due to launch later this year are taking a new approach to this, following organisations like the one that we're talking on right now, talkRADIO, which is quite proud about the fact that it has different opinions, honest opinions, and genuine debate over the day, not sort of a fake pretense of impartiality, which really does sort of smuggle in agenda. Honest views, honest opinions on the table. And people are seeing that people are moving to that type of broadcasting because we live in an internet era where we have an absolutely endless supply of content from all different angles, and people are realizing that they can seek out what they want when they want. You know, I mean, you mentioned a couple of really interesting things, like documentaries are a great one, right? I mean, Netflix, yeah, it has 700. Do you know how many documentaries are on YouTube? I hazard a guess that it would be in the thousands. Okay, YouTube is absolutely spectacular.
And also, by the way, while we're on documentaries, just so we remember, Netflix has got more than 130 more documentaries that are available than the BBC. But the BBC. Let's try and argue its case. I mean, a lot of people of a certain age have a lot of affection for it. Whenever there's a national disaster or a crisis, people still do tend to go to the BBC. It does, as you say, it has the Asian service, it has the Welsh service, it has Six Music, these esoteric services. I think that's a good thing, but perhaps it's lost sense of its purpose along the way. What does it need to do? What would it need to do to keep someone like you happy? What do you think it needs to do? It clearly needs to recalibrate itself in some way. How should it do that? How should it go about it?
That needs to happen via a national conversation, right? I mean, you mentioned the Welsh service. I mean, people in my family speak Gaelic, and I think that it's very important that those kind of services, that there is clearly a market for that, and a cultural and national value to maintaining the Gaelic language and the Welsh language and even the Cornish language. But the government really needs, and the people need to discuss how that's done. That shouldn't be funded just because you tune in for 5 minutes of Radio 4 a day, and that shouldn't be funded, and then create a service which is exceptionally well serviced and actually strangles the entire news media industry across that country. That's an incredible jump to make, to go from saying there's a small amount of valuable cultural national assets that need to be protected to saying we need to smother our entire news media organization with what is one of the biggest news media companies in the world, funded really, I think, in a coercive and quite violent way. I mean, there's some really interesting things, and I think the really interesting thing about this statement from Tim Davies is he's saying this because he's in a corner, right? Okay,
well, he's fighting to keep the license fee. If he doesn't accept that, at the very least, there's going to be a reduction in the license fee, he's going to inflict self-harm on himself, because they have to accept this is going to change. I don't think they want to, but it's going to be reduced, isn't it? At the very least, I think.
The thing is, the whole media world is changing. It's not just the BBC, right? Okay, the internet has completely revolutionized the way we consume news media, and it's meant there's a lot more broadcasting around. And so the BBC is having to adjust to that like everyone else. And I think that the BBC is sort of in a corner right now, because what we've seen with Disney and what we've seen with Netflix has completely revolutionized the way we consume media. And the BBC people have been pointing out to the BBC for a long time that if they commercialized maybe 10 years ago, put up a subscription and got global sort of interest in all British broadcasts, if they globalized and commercialized 20 years ago, they could really be rivaling sort of the Netflix, and they really missed a trick. And now what he's saying is, well, we're worth more than that, and we're better than that, we're morally above that. And he's only saying these wild claims because he really is in a corner. And I mean, so some of the really interesting things, like look at the stats for the Tiger King, right, was watched 65 million times. The Crown was watched 74 million times.
Yeah, massive figures.
The Witcher was watched 76 million times. These are all Netflix shows. The Bodyguard, the latest, biggest sort of BBC show. It's very hard to compare these things, UK global, but they maxed out at 10 million. Yeah. Like, the BBC is already becoming an irrelevance
because frankly, it's got to like the commercial terrestrial channels here. It's going to have to face the fact that the business model of traditional old school scheduled television is dying on its backside. They need to get aboard the streaming market pretty damn quickly.
Exactly.
But I think we are at the crossroads. It's going to be very interesting times ahead, particularly as
exactly.
BBC.
We can get upset about the BBC falling, and I no doubt some people will. But I think actually the takeaway from this is we're at a very exciting time for global news media. The internet has meant that anyone, like I am right now, sat in my bedroom with a 4G connection, can become a broadcaster.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that talkRADIO is doing a more interesting visual news service for a fraction of the budget than BBC News, 25, not quite, maybe 12 hours a day, I think is absolutely glorious. The fact that we've got new news media channels about to launch this year is fantastic. We've got a lot to look forward to, and we should stop crying over a little bit of spilt milk and the BBC going, because what's coming next is far more exciting.
Well, in its defense,